Want to start the session by looking at the seasonals. We just talked there about the upcoming seasonal patterns, and as we move into October, and I've been mentioning over this last couple of weeks, there's a lot of bullish periods, a lot of bullish patterns as we head into October. A lot of the equity markets tend to come to life again, although they haven't exactly been sleeping. But we tend to get some really nice movements as we head into October and November. And I did say about building a watch list, using the time as the markets perhaps retrace last week. If you had no interest in being on the short side, using that time, let the market retrace, build up a watch list, for then you prepare for when we start to get the momentum to the upside again. And there's lots, like I say, whenever I'm coming into the planner, I go to the markets that have an interest US, not sectors, sorry. Yes, stocks. You can look at optimal. I'm not saying to only ever look at the green ones. Orange patterns. So if you're not familiar with what we're looking at here, this is all the optimum patterns that are on this. They start on these dates. So obviously we're sitting here now in the 29th, coming into the last few days of September and into October, and that's a prime period. So the patterns historically start on these days, but it could be a few days before, a few days after. So don't just be expecting them to start at JP Morgan on the 1st of October, for example. That's not how. That's sort of the average date of when they start. The color that we have is how strongly correlated that market is. That's price action is correlated with the historical pattern. If it's green, then it's at least 50% and above positive correlation. If it's orange, it's positive, but it's anything from 0 to 50, so it could be a very, very, very low positive, but it's still in positive territory. And then if it's red, it's anything is negative, so -1 to -100% in terms of negative correlation. I wouldn't completely rule out those, but they are less likely. If a market's not following its seasonal pattern, it's less likely to all of a sudden wake up. But it does happen. You can see a market completely following a pattern very different to what it historically does. It enters a bullish period, or a very strong bullish period, or a very strong bearish period, and all of a sudden it comes to life. So it's not saying that can't follow a seasonal pattern, but it is less likely. And a lot of our back testing, which we continually do, there's a significant increase on the probability of a seasonal pattern occurring if the market is already correlated with that pattern, as in the price action of it. If you want to recap, if you click on the explainer at the top of the seasonal planner, it will talk about the different patterns, it will talk about the correlations and what the values mean. But that's a quick overview. So just looking at a couple in here, and I say this is just on the US stocks. And you'll see, I mentioned JP Morgan last week with United Health. There's a few on here that I quite like. And I've already got them open across the top, and they're already in the notes. But just as an example, what I do, right-clicking, opening the chart, just to show you how I would go through and actually take a look at the market. You can see as JP Morgan, we are entering. We've had a period through here, bit of a correction through that, but we've definitely we finished the period strongly. Another period been positive in through here. We had a bearish period here. We didn't follow through. I've seen a break to the upside, so it's very much outperforming its typical pattern. And we're entering into another period. Bit of volatility around the end of the month historically, but we head into October, we typically see it come to life again. So this is looking positive, and you can see the price action as well. If you look at the pattern, you can see this sort of an area here where the market's building and brewing, and we get this break, and we have a nice strong end to the year. And if we look at something similar, actually go right back to the start of the year, you can see something that got across the price action. The yellow line on this chart, for those of you not familiar with it, the yellow line is the current year's price action, this is the daily closing price. And you can see the breakout here. So we're already outperforming actually this pattern. But it's something that appeals to me. And if it's of interest, you can click on the trading view link. It'll open up. If you do, whether you have a trading view account or not, it'll open up the platform or open up the chart. If you have a trading view account, it'll open obviously in your layout, etc., in your settings. So looking at the chart, and now I'm trying to find something that makes sense to me. Now, ideally, I would like to see a retracement. And that's what I was looking for last week. And I mentioned this last week. I was expecting the equities to see a retracement, a lot of the indices to retrace, and we did get that actually. So it would have been ideal to see this last week coming into this area and bouncing from that point, building from here, and then trying to be on the long side out of a box like that. That would have been plan A. But JP Morgan actually was outperformed, moved sideways, and actually seen they were starting to see a break to the upside on Friday. Now, as it stands in this area, this is the kind of stock that I would be more inclined to look at as an intraday play. We've already seen a move. Essentially, the move started here. We've seen that move to the upside, and we're getting this late continuation pattern through here, and we're seeing this break from it. So that's the kind of thing. It's not in my ideal territory, but it's still bullish, it's still breaking, and you can see we're going to gap above. We've seen a sell-off on Friday, but we're going to see a gap above this area. So if we hold above that level today, it'd be an intraday play that I'll be looking at. So yeah, happy to still trade this, still on my list, but I'd be much more comfortable and trying to stay into it on a longer time frame. If we had seen that retracement into that level, I'd maybe get maybe a 4 hour or most likely a daily. Still maybe taking a smaller time frame entry into it for confirmation, but based off the daily chart, being able to get my stop loss below a nice level of support, and then try to hold the position for a longer period of time, sort of medium to not long as an investment type hold, but certainly sort of a medium. A couple of weeks in there would be a week to a couple of weeks would be nice. But when we give this sort of structure, I'd be looking at that more of an intraday time frame. So, and that's simply the process I'm going through in order to define something, a market that's of interest to me. And there's lots on there at the moment. And as I've said, the last couple of weeks, if you take the time, build a watch list, it'll definitely reap rewards whenever we actually get into October and we start to see the markets coming back to life again. I've said a couple of times already, I primarily look at US equities, and that's what the watch list consists of. But you can see here lots of names. These are the tickers, the symbols. You might not be familiar with them. When you type them into TradingView, it will come up for you. But these are all US. There was a couple. There's a UK stock. I just happened to click on it. I didn't specifically look through UK stocks, but there was one that I clicked on and took a look at. It was of interest. I will go through the charts in a second. And there was another one. This is actually Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Very nice structure, very nice pattern. I haven't copied and pasted all the seasonal patterns onto the notes because it's just, there's too many. It's just a copy and paste exercise. So if you want to take a look, come onto the platform. The charts are there. But we'll dig into a few now. Microsoft is one, and that's the one I've actually shared the screenshot off. You can see the market. We got the low. We're following the pattern, a nice little corrective area. We're coming into this point now. We'd expect to see the market to move to the upside. It doesn't have the strongest correlation. It's only 20% on here. But that's why I say I'm not just focused on markets that are showing 20% or showing 50% and above. So it's green. This would be in the orange category. But it doesn't sound particularly that strong. That's that 20%. Positive correlation, but when you come and look at the chart, it actually looks stronger. There's definitely, we had the low all the way back through here. It actually was in April, but typically we get that low end of March. There's been that move to the upside. We got this retracement period. So visually, it actually looks a lot stronger than what the 20% suggests, and that's something why I would recommend looking at patterns that are outside of the greens, because they're even something in the red. There will be periods that just actually, you know what, I think that's a bit better. But when in terms of correlation, when it's calculating the correlation, it's outright is what they've done on that day. It is based on the daily period, so it can be a little bit. It can rule out a few nice opportunities, but certainly Microsoft is something that's of interest to me. Looking at well, actually, we'll get into the charts in a second because I'm all on my list. But Microsoft, I like. JP Morgan, we've just talked about. Nvidia's on the list. Again, significantly outperforming. We typically have a little bit of a lull through here, but with really nice, strong performance through that period. Actually corrected here where we typically see that rally, but we had a continuation of the previous move. Now seeing this consolidation through September, which is typical. Can we get that break to the upside as we get into October? The sweet spot here isn't actually until for a little bit later, but you'll notice the low is in this area that we're currently sitting in. So yes, the optimum period isn't for a little bit later, but if we can make a low in this point and I'm in it as we get into that optimum period, that's even better. So again, another reason why I say to look ahead of time rather than just going or coming onto the platform, what's happening on the 21st of October and going, oh, let's look at Nvidia. But Nvidia could be breaking here, and we're up at this area. And yes, we're in the optimum period, but we've already seen maybe a significant move in that. So if I can get a move earlier that fits and we are still in a bullish period, but it's just saying that this is the optimum. It's the historically, those have been the days that have seen the highest return over the shortest period of time, and that's what the optimum period is saying. But that's not the only time that it goes up. You'll see we make lows even in these areas, making the low towards the end of the month, and then we start to see the acceleration shortly afterwards. But if I can get in around the seasonal low, that's even better. And video we'll take a look at, but that's, you can see current price action we're building here. I would be of interest as we start to see a break above that, those highs. I feel like it's okay. I'll look in the chart in a second. It's not ideal. When I looked at the chart, I was particularly drawn by this. It's actually a decent intraday play, a nice intraday breakout. I didn't, and I wouldn't have traded it as an end of day. I'll take a look at this in a second. The chart structure is not ideal, or certainly how I would do it. JB Hunt, transport underperforming, but it's coming into a real nice level in here, which we'll take a look at in a second on the charts. It's a real nice level in through here. It is in line with the pattern. It's underperforming certainly through this period, but we're starting to come back in line with what the pattern is suggesting. And historically, we do see this move to the upside, so it's a bit of interest. If we can see a sort of a coming to life in here again. Again, as I say, we'll take a look at the charts in a second. United Health, there was a big sell-off earlier in the year, but we're seeing a strong base being built, and now we're coming into a period where we typically see that outperformance. It is on my list. This is something also actually maybe investors could take a look at. Those of you like to actually buy and hold shares, it's something I'd recommend taking a look at. And the structure is of interest, certainly seasonally as a bullish period right through this point, whether it's trading shorter term, if we actually look at the investing patterns on here as well, that's one of the optimum patterns, 85% of the time over the last 28 years. So that's 24 years out of the 28. We've seen positive returns through this period. So it's something to be looking at. And even after that correction, I think there's been strong demand in here. We've got good volume. So we'll take a look at in a second. Johnson & Johnson, we mentioned last week as well, of a potential break. You can see this little double bottom in here. We typically historically make that little double bottom, or just a little bit earlier. We're seeing this initial break to the upside, and I talked about that last week. It's already breaking. Walmart also, a bit similar to Nvidia, possibly building for a breakout, taking out these highs. We'll take a look at that chart in a second. And the Commonwealth Bank of Australia is the one I just mentioned. I really, really like this structure. Not following perfectly the seasonal pattern, but I really like the structure that's on the chart. And we'll take a look at this in a second. Are these entering this period on a breakout from here, which we're actually just doing today? It would be really nice for that continuation to the upside for this. So it is something that's of interest. And sorry, we don't need that. So yeah, this is high on the list. I do like these. So get into the charts themselves off that. So it made that list already. You can see there's a couple of interests that have already broken. Like I mentioned, this is a nice structure. This is one thing that I did like. I like this type of structure. Let's have a look at the volume as well. Volume has been pushing to the upside through this consolidation, and we're getting a break. Now, personally, I would approach this on an intraday basis. If I want to trade on an end of day and try to hold this position for longer, I want to get my stop loss into a point where I can be a little bit safer, and that's going to be down in this area. So that's not ideal in this structure. But we've seen a break of a strong daily structure continuation breakout above this level, and we break in this point. Going down at a smaller time frame is what I'd be more inclined to want to do. An initial break above the level, started to consolidate in this area, volume strong, and trying to add into our buying on these breaks and these pushes to the upside and trade it intraday. And that's how I would approach that. Similar to Johnson & Johnson. I mentioned last week, and very similar to JP Morgan, I would have liked to see maybe a little bit of a push lower, maybe coming down at least into this 50 moving average when the indices were retracing, seeing that weakness, but stronger stocks, and we see this leaders out of a move, and Johnson & Johnson seem to be one that had no interest in actually that weakness, and we're getting this break. So I'm not long in this. I'm not in this already because of the fact I'm sort of more inclined to sort of wait as the markets were retracing last week. But we are seeing this already, this break to the upside. Now you haven't broken, there's a couple of options. Maybe we're going to gap higher today as it stands. Let's see, we're not at the open yet, but we're going to gap higher. likely. If we come back into this area, maybe we consolidate in here for a number of days, then that's something I would consider for a breakout on an end of day. So having a stop loss back inside the range, and then looking for a breakout from this point. That'll be okay. Volume's strong. There, we're seeing that push to the upside, so volume making a new high as prices pushing to new highs. That looks positive. So that'll be one way of approaching it. If we gap higher from the open to today, gap higher from the open, wrong button, possibly come back in and retest the highs from Friday and build a base from here and looking to get long, that'll be another opportunity for long entries and trading that intraday. But if we come back below that high, Friday's high, come back below and start to actually see weakness and back inside Friday's range, that's a possibility. We could see it sit in there for a couple of days and then give us a different opportunity. So if we stay in the same trajectory we currently are, then I'd be looking intraday. If we pause, come back into Friday's range, maybe we consolidate in here for a couple of days. It gives us the opportunity maybe to trade a breakout and trade an end of day position. If we come back inside the range sort of below 177, then obviously longs are off. JP Morgan, mentioned already, Nvidia touched on that, consolidating. Volumes continue to push to the upside, consolidating below the highs. It's possibly an intraday here as we push, trying to get an entry before we get to the level. If you can get a nice entry point into that, I wouldn't object to that. If you can get a nice tight entry and get the stop loss to break even. But the idea would be to be long if we get that break to the upside. Seasonally, as I say, we're coming into that period. We don't get to the optimum period for another couple of weeks, but if we can get a little break sooner and be in that, even better. Microsoft, similar actually, consolidating in this area. We've seen a bit of a sell-off after earnings come back a few weeks ago, but we're consolidating here nicely. Volume starting to slowly build. I'd be looking for a break above that recent high. If we can get into that, that's something of interest. Maybe a long above the high, stop loss below Thursday's low would be of interest. Walmart, similar to Nvidia, looking for a break above the highs in here would be of interest. Volume started to come off, but let's see, we're a little bit off that high, so that would be of interest. JP Hunt Transport was the one I talked about in terms of underperforming, but come into a really nice level. You can see the long-term trend line in through here. The weekly chart not looking great on the volume front. Daily's a bit better. Daily is better. You can see price action has clearly pushed to a new low, but volume actually hasn't matched that. We're turning higher. We could see price come back off that level of resistance in here and come back into that level. So it may be a bit of a burner, a slow burner in here. It's not certainly top of the list, but given the structure that we have here, it could be a real nice move coming off this. Just might not be this week, but I do like where we're currently sitting. Alternatively, say if we see a strong break back above this level, that is something I would be looking for continuation to the upside in there. United Health, I mentioned earlier, I'd say it is entering a real nice seasonal period for it. For the stock, we did see a big sell-off going back a few months ago, big sell-off and through here. We've had a reasonable bounce, been able to stabilize itself. We're seeing volume coming back in on the long side. So there's a couple of ways you could play this, whether trading intraday, swing trade it if you want to hold it for a week or two, or if you actually want to buy the stock. You'll notice, buy the stock and hold given the levels that we're at. You'll notice there's a couple of alerts that I have on here. These aren't orders, these are just alerts to tell me where we are. We're currently stuck in this sort of a range following the initial break to the upside. Volume has actually declined a little bit in here, so not ideal given how prices is moving sideways. I'd like to see more of accumulation in there to give you that push to the upside. So it may be a case, maybe we actually see more price retrace back in. There's a nice level here, so gap support could be an idea, or we could see price coming back in around that 323 area. That'll be a nice point to possibly add for. But given where we currently sit, we go down into the hourly chart, you can see that area. If we do build from here and we are able to make higher lows, start to see a breakthrough this point, then it would be of interest if we take out last week's high. So I'd say it's on the list, but certainly there's multiple ways you could get into that. Parker, Hannafins, it's an option. It's further down the list for a reason. The structure doesn't appeal to me as much as some of the others, but it does historically perform well. We'll see how it is. You can see an alert here as we break out. Let's see how the nature of how it actually moves when it does break out. St. James's Place, Mentioned as a UK stock as of interest. Volume looks decent in through here. Price actions, not great, but that's quite common for a lot of the UK stocks. But I'll keep an eye on it. I'm not long of this. I don't have an area of where I want to be long just yet. But yeah, it's something that's of interest. And the one I mentioned, the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. So again, another one just happened to click on. I wasn't specifically looking through Australian stocks. So there possibly could well be others, but that's a really nice structure, really nice retracement that we had previously in through here. Seeing the week, this is a weekly chart I'm looking at. Weekly coming back into the 50. Nice move coming off that. Nice little retracement. Not much selling going on through here. It just looks like a retracement of the market in terms of a little bit of profit taking. Volumes holding strong in here. We're seeing momentum to the downside, getting weaker, building that base in through there, just above that 50 moving average. We're starting to see that break to the upside. So a real nice structure of the market. You can see the lows. We are making new lows, but we're struggling. We're not seeing that momentum. Selling into it, but getting bought. Again, selling into it and getting bought. Now we're seeing this break to the upside. So any of you Australian followers, it is something I would be taking a look at. Don't have to be in Australia, but as long as you have access to trading it, it is something of interest. I really like that weekly. And as I mentioned, the seasonal chart is not a particularly strong positive correlation. The all year's 36%, the 20-year only 11%. Coming into that period where we could really see that both aligning in this area and see this move to the upside. So I like the structure. And there is certainly that possibility we're seeing that move to the upside, and the timing of it is absolutely spot on. So there are lots. I've tried to narrow it down till sort of six or eight, 10 markets, depending on what you're looking at. There are many others. Spend some time on the platform. Hopefully you already have. There's a few others have already broken. You can obviously look forward as we go into next month. We certainly could be looking already into this area. I've mentioned NVIDIA there, that sweet spot doesn't come until later in October. There's definitely going to be other markets that are the same sort of scenario. We actually make a low maybe a week to 2 weeks before that optimum period, and if you can try to get into that low, that is ideal. So we definitely should be looking a couple of weeks ahead. Not just a case of coming in, okay, it's the 29th of September. What happens on the 29th of September? That's not going to work. Seasonal charts, seasonal patterns allows you to see what's potentially happening in the future. If you're not looking ahead of time to see that, then you're not benefiting at all from what's really in the seasonal patterns. But yeah, lots in there, and that's just for US stocks. By all means, dig into whatever others your preference is. And as I say, if you want to keep it, if you're still fairly new, if you want to keep it to just the highest probability ones, looking at the optimum, so it's just the one for the green, I have no problem with that. That's fine. But I would recommend you just sort of try to expand, particularly if you're breaking it down into sort of small groups anyway, whether it be US stocks, UK stocks, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't take you that long going through them.